I think we're live. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Colonel Stan Scrabbit. I'm the Northeast Region Recruiting and Retention Director. And with me, I have Lieutenant Colonel Darren Ninnis, who is the National Recruiting and Retention Manager. And we want to welcome you to tonight's presentation, where we are going to be talking about some ideas that I'm getting from this book called 365 Ideas for Recruiting, Retaining, Motivating, and Rewarding Your Volunteers. And basically, we're going to look at the first two chapters. But before we get started, Darren, thank you for joining.
Yeah, no problem. Good evening, everybody. I really appreciate anybody who's online and watching our presentation, or who will watch our presentation soon. If you're interested in asking a question during the presentation, we have on the right side of your screen. Let me see if I can point correctly to the right side of the screen. I can't. Anyway, it's all backwards. I get confused. But if you look up on the right side of your screen, there's a chat window here in the live window, and you can ask a question there. Or we'll also be monitoring the hashtag #CapRecruiting on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter person and you're willing to ask questions there, please do.
Very good. So did you tell them about the our website, bit.ly/CAPPres?
Sorry, I completely forgot. There we go. There is a Google document we have running. It is at bit.ly/CapPrez, CAPPREZ. It's a Google document that we're going to be keeping open for anybody who wants to type a question and ask it there. So it's sort of a third channel for question and answer.
Very good. All right, let's get started. So I'm kind of doing this old school today. We got the easel out. I'm standing. We're going to do this presentation, which demonstrates, hopefully to you, that you can create these presentations for your folks. You don't have to put together a slick PowerPoint. You don't have to, do all the kind of bells and whistles. You can actually go old school and make this happen. So without further ado, what we're talking about in this book, and we're really looking at the first two chapters, is we are going to talk about getting the program set up to receive volunteers. So that's what we're doing right now, is how we can get volunteers into the program, do it smoothly, be prepared for them, instead of it being a last minute decision. But let's talk about volunteers first of all. First of all, there's countless people that want to serve. But what we need to do is make them feel comfortable in our organization. So that way they're going to share three important things: their time, their talent, and their treasure, right? So we want folks to give their time to help us do all these great missions that we're doing. They got wonderful talents, and we're not utilizing them to their fullest. But they also may want to give monetarily to keep our programs going. And so we want to bring those folks in. Now, there was some statistics done on what the value of a volunteer is. And right now, it's sitting at $23.56 per hour. This is what a volunteer is calculated at in their time and their energy that they apply to our program. We need to treat them like they're worth that much, right? So we need to think about that. We need to do that, right? So we need to make sure that we are investing into that program. Two ways that we can do this. Whoops. First, we need to make sure that we're providing proper training. Continuous training. We need to be focused on getting volunteers trained. Now, this is the way this book is written. This is written for, say, nonprofits that have a paid staff, or corporations that have a paid staff, dealing with volunteers that are coming in that are unpaid. We have a very unique organization in the fact that the bulk of us are unpaid. But we are established and in place to that we have folks that are basically kind of inset. They're staff that have been there for a while. They're experienced, and so we bring in these new volunteers. We want to incorporate them into the fold. So we have to have kind of this mindset. So the first thing is training, that people want to come and serve, but they also expect to be recognized in some way, right? That and there's a lot of, I met a lot of folks in Wyoming that, oh, I don't need this recognition. Everyone appreciates being appreciated. So we need to make sure we're doing a good job in the rewards and recognitions. I'm going to tell you from my experience as a wing commander, one of the hardest things to do was to get award packages from the 10 units that were in our wing. We are now ramping up for the award season, and it's time to recognize those folks that have gone out and worked tremendously hard for our program and get them some kind of recognition. Important thing to do. So let me slide down my notes here a little bit. Okay. So these are two things that we do. One of the primary reasons folks are leaving our program, failed expectations. They are coming in, they have certain expectations, and when we don't meet those expectations, they walk. They basically fire us. They decide that they no longer want to be part of the program, and they leave. And it's all because of failed expectations. And these are things that we can control. We can set the right professional program up. We can get the right materials. We can provide the right training. We can provide the right mentors. We can do a lot of things to set the right expectations for the people coming in. Anything you want to add, Darren?
You know what, Stan? This is a big thing. I always make mention of this to folks when I'm talking about recruiting. Is we want to make sure that we're selling the Civil Air Patrol that we have. So my wife, she volunteers at a local sort of a organization. It's like Goodwill. They do clothing, a resale kind of situation. And she knows, when they came to her and said, or when she went to them and said, hey, I'm interested in volunteering, she's not going to be swinging a wrench underneath the hood of a car for the Goodwill garage. No, she's going to be, sorting clothing and things like that, stuff that's within her wheelhouse, stuff that she's interested in doing. So if somebody comes to Civil Air Patrol and they say, hey, look, I'm interested in search and rescue, or I'm interested in aviation, then put them to work doing those things. Don't say, oh, you know what? You're an IT professional on the weekend, or during the week, during your 9-to-5 job. You should, we need help in IT. I mean, maybe that person says, hey, look, I'm an IT guy. I'm willing to help out there as well. But maybe they're really interested in, flying as an aircrew member. And if you immediately say, oh, well, that aircrew is great, but we need this, and you sort of don't pair them with what they came in for, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. So, hey, just a quick reminder, we do have a document out there that feel free to go in, throw out questions, things like that. We're monitoring bit.ly/CAPPREZ, CapPrez, all lowercase, everything's lowercase. So feel free to go out there. So another plug for that. So, okay, so we understand volunteers will leave if they don't meet their expectations. Right? We know that we need to provide training. We know that we need to provide recognition and rewards. Let's start talking about your recruiting preparation. The first thing is, and we'll go through each one of these, is basically determine your needs. And this is really geared for senior members and not necessarily cadets. So a lot of what I'm saying here definitely works for both groups, but some things are very specific for senior members. And the first thing is, get your needs straight. If you are recruiting for pilots, then go recruit for pilots. If you need a finance officer, go recruit for a finance officer. Warm body recruiting does not work. It's unsatisfying for the volunteer. It's unsatisfying for you because you're bringing in somebody and you don't know what to do with them. So get your needs straight and make sure that you're dealing with these needs. And they can take on supplemental things like Colonel Ninnis talked about, being part of air crews and mission staff. That's a lot of, the time to go out and play, work hard and play there. But chores need to be done. So a lot of things at the squadron level need to be taken care of. And we, by going out and getting the right people, that helps a lot.
It's important too, Stan, that, a lot of squadrons, they say, well, they just go out and recruit people. It's like part of being a recruiting and retention person is advising your commander, okay, hey, look, we're short in aerospace education, pilots, and IT people. So you go out and target aerospace education, pilots, and IT people, not just moms and dads and the guy who's down the block who likes airplanes or whatever. If you want something specific, you need to go for it, but you need to identify what specifically your unit needs. Not every unit is the same. Not every unit has the same need.
Absolutely. A few other things that you're going to look at, what's their workspace? Making sure that you have a place for them in the organization. Making sure you have a mentor lined up, a budget. Hard to recruit without any money, and we know this at various levels. Making sure your staff is prepared to receive new people. This should not be a surprise that suddenly we're doing recruiting, because this brings on extra work, and we'll talk about that. Legal and safety, making sure that we don't have any liability issues, making sure that they're well versed in safety. These are a couple. This one is a new one for me, and something that I didn't really do. I mean, I did it kind of rudimentary, but they talk about it more in depth. But having a screening policy and a questionnaire, that we don't have to bring everybody on. Just because they're interested doesn't mean they have to join.
Stan, to translate that to Civil Air Patrol, this is that whole membership board and first talk sort of situation. When Civil Air Patrol talks about, you should have a membership board, you should have you don't just bring a guy on, oh, hey, great, come on in, here's your membership paperwork out, and you hand them off to the professional development guy. No, you need to sit that person down. You understand what you're getting into, or, do you have the kind of availability, that sort of thing, and also talk to them about their background. The last thing you want is the guy who says, oh, well, I have a felony conviction. Oh, well, whoops, maybe we could have solved ourselves some problems if we had that conversation at the beginning versus at the end.
Absolutely. And last, having a record keeping system. And what they're talking about is, like these questionnaires that they're addressing, having a place to put them so you can refer to them later. Maybe the individual doesn't join right now, but you still have that information. And a lot of folks are not keeping those kind of things that they can go and mine later. So definitely something to consider. All right, let's talk about needs. I addressed it a little bit, but senior members, as Colonel Ninnis said, don't just go blindly bring everybody in that's, that has a pulse and breathes, right? That's not the organization that we're trying to develop. We want folks that are qualified, that can add value to the organization. If it looks like they're going to be trouble, we don't need them. Seriously, it's not worth the pain. So identify your needs and then target your recruiting there. In the last presentation, we talked about using LinkedIn, for example, to target recruiting. Great way of going out and looking for that finance officer or somebody that, deals with logistics, or somebody that's in media and public affairs that could be added to your organization. So target who you're trying to go. So you have to understand what your needs are. First place to start is probably your organization chart, where you look at your org chart and go, those are blank. It would really be great to have a recruiting and retention officer. Where could I find that? Human resources folks. There's some folks that are in there doing recruiting and retention. There's professionals that do recruiting for organizations. Wouldn't it be great if we had them? Part of that in your needs is identifying what training that individual is going to need and start getting that information prepared. Who's going to provide the training? Do you have all the resources you need to get them up and going as soon as possible? The thing that's most frustrating is somebody comes in and they're sitting around because you didn't plan properly to get them engaged in the organization. So definitely look at your needs, what you need for your organization, but also what you need to put together to help them excel. Mentor. So there's two people here that are really key. One is they're going to be their immediate supervisor. Most small units, that ends up being the commander. Okay, but not always, right? They may have a deputy commander for seniors, or they may be, if they're coming on for ES, you may have an ES officer and they report to that individual. The other one is a mentor. These two are essential. So every person that comes into that organization, you need to tell them, you need to provide contact information for those people and say, here is how you get a hold of your mentor and your supervisor. So they know who they need to reach out to when they have an issue or they got a question. You need to get the right people into those positions. Not everyone makes a good mentor, right? Some really keys to this: they have to be pleasant, right? They have to be basically a nice person. And to be honest, some folks in our organization are not so nice. But you can learn to be nice, right? This is a learned skill. You can figure this out, okay? But you need to do that, okay? And one of the quotes from the book that I have written down here is, if your volunteer does not find the experience of volunteering pleasurable, if they're not having a good time, there is nothing to keep him or her from leaving. Okay, if they are not enjoying themselves, they don't need to stay, and they don't. So let's work on getting pleasant. The other thing of that mentor and supervisor, they need to be good listeners, right? They need to understand what the individual, what their needs are, and try to attend to those needs as much as possible. Okay. What's the training plan? What are you doing to get this individual ready to go, so they can be productive members to the organization? I've watched a lot of people come in and they say they are being brought in as pilots and haven't flown for a year. Absolutely ridiculous that we cannot move them faster in the program. Somebody needs to handhold them through level 1. They need to get them set up with a check pilot and an instructor pilot, all the people they need to do. This is where this mentor comes in. They know who to contact. They need to work to get that person on the fast track to get them fully engaged in what they want to do. Because if we don't do that, we fail to meet their expectations and they leave. And also this contact information, right? This is tied to this, making sure that they're linked together. Other things to kind of consider, both on the mentor side and on the volunteer side, is what the workload is for each of those, right? If you've got a mentor that's coming up on a big work project and they're going to be fully engaged on that, maybe you need to find a new mentor, somebody that's got a little more free time in their schedule to help the individual out. Okay, so those are things to consider. Anything you want to add on that, Colonel Dennis?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, this is I do see this a lot, and you're absolutely right, Stan, is that folks come in the organization and they're not 100% sure. It's funny, the supervisor isn't always the same as their mentor. And that's an important distinction, because I had a conversation with a senior member, a new senior member of my unit. He had no idea who the sort of next person up the chain of command was from him. So he was like, I talked to you because I happen to have your email, not because I'm his supervisor, not because I'm the guy he should be talking to, but because he happens to have a good rapport with me and he's got my email. Well, is that right? No. And I said, no, you really need to be talking to the deputy commander for seniors, not me. So it's important that people understand sort of it's a hierarchical organization, which is a little different than other organizations, and where they fit into it when they first come in the organization, and how that's different.
Absolute. Absolute. And remember, the things that we are talking about right now are the things that you should be considering when you are preparing to receive new volunteers. Okay, so next thing that you need to consider, your budget. Okay, a lot of different moving parts in this budget that you have to consider, and very often we're running on zero budget. So this is the budget season right now. This is the time, actually it's probably over by now, that as an organization that you should be sitting down with your budget and deciding what you're going to spend on for the upcoming year. Things to consider: print ads or social media ads. Facebook, for example, getting something out in there. So I would consider that into print ads. Do you want to do TV and radio spots, right? Can you get away with a PSA, right? Some folks may not want to do that. You may want to consider that. Also consider movie theaters, putting a display in a movie theater. Banners. Colonel Ninnis just shared, and I'm going to package up, just shared a nice set of banners, set of displays that another state had put together. Wonderful way of showing off CAP. I saw another one that received an award at a fair because their booth just crushed it, right? These kind of things don't just come out of the blue air. You got to spend money for them. So thinking about banners, posters. If you're doing a campaign, I was doing 2 to 3 campaigns a year in Laramie, Wyoming. And probably for each campaign spent about $100 in posters, 11 by 17 posters that we went store to store and put those posters up. But the money had to come from somewhere. Okay. Promotional items. We once upon a time got DDR stuff, and those are promotional items. But there are catalogs where you can order your own things that have your unit's information on them, that come relatively cheap, not that, I mean, it will cost you money, right? So you have to think about that. Other things, travel and food, right? Do you have people coming in that you have to pay for their travel and food, or do you have to go somewhere where, you have to do travel and food? Maybe you're doing something for the group and everybody has to travel in, if you can pay for somebody's meal, that's pretty good.
This is a great example. We always do pizza for our setup crew. So the squadron pays for pizza for the setup crew for the open house.
Right, and we, for our open house, we'd buy punch and cookies and had that available. Okay, so those are food items, and also event expenses. If you get kicked out of your armory and suddenly have to do this event at maybe a hotel, now you got to pay for the hotel, for a room in a hotel or something like that. So, those kind of expenses. But you should have a consideration of those expenses up front before you start your campaign season. One great way to start planning the budget is look at past events. Past events, how much money did you spend? Are we going to do the event the same way? Well, here's a rough guide on how much money that we're going to spend on that. So something to definitely keep in mind. What else? Your staff. Okay, so all the members that are current members need to be brought up to speed, and what they are going to be tasked with in the short term as doing your recruiting campaign, or in the long term, maybe they're being assigned as a mentor. What do they need to prepare for that? So you need to make sure that your staff knows exactly what needs to be done to do to get this volunteer campaign off the ground. Document, 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 right? Put together checklists, put together, I go from unit to unit, and we've been recruiting for 75 years. And it's amazing that we don't have any documentation that we can follow to go from one year to another or one campaign to another. It's like we're reinventing this on the fly. Let's build checklists that we can follow, share checklists, so everybody, that we can be successful at this. Jump in anytime, Darren, when you want to. Okay.
All right, you got it.
Legal and safety. Fortunately for our program, we got a set of regulations. It used to be like 4.5 inches thick, that tell us what we need to know for our program. And that it's a pretty good guide. But a new member coming in is totally oblivious to this, and they have to be trained up. You cannot have an expectation that they know they have memorized 4 inches of regulations. We just cannot expect that, and yet we do every day. So start with the ones that are absolutely critical, the ones that help us screen for potential problems. We don't want to bring in people that are going to cause our organization problems. We want to make sure that things are done safely, so all those things are in place, but we need to make sure that we have that forefront in our mind. Okay?
Stan, let me take a slightly different tack on the legal and safety thing too, and it speaks back to the staffing aspect. My squadron's got a lot of cadets. We've got about 80 cadets on the books. So, and about 60 showing up on a regular basis, and that requires some supervision. So one of the things we looked at was how many cadet program senior members do we have, or do we need to appropriately supervise and manage our cadet squadron? So we literally use, and that's a safety thing to some extent, because you want to make sure you're supervising, you can't have 2 senior members and 60 cadets. That's, the span of control is just too gigantic. So that again speaks back to that staffing aspect and helping your commander ascertain exactly what you've got to do and what you need to manage the squadron you have.
Very good. Next on the list, having a screening process in place. And Colonel Ninnis, he talked about the membership boards. You have a membership board. But looking at this book, what they're trying to do is, the reason that you're screening somebody is to find suitable volunteers for your organization, right? We're not doing warm body recruiting. We should not be doing warm body recruiting, especially for senior members. Cadets, warm body recruiting. But seniors, not so much. So we need to have a mechanism to get the right people into the right jobs and make sure that there's a suitable fit for what they want to volunteer for. So what they recommend is build a questionnaire. So a questionnaire is to find out about the individual's background. Things that you want on the questionnaire, or you should consider on the questionnaire. How did they hear about the opportunity to be a volunteer? Right? Because we want to replicate that, right? If you posted something on Volunteer Match and they came to the function because of that, that's great to know. So you want to make sure that you can replicate that. Educational background, employment history, volunteer experiences, clubs and associations, all that kind of tell a story about an individual, of what their capabilities are. We have individuals in this organizations that are CEOs of their own companies, and yet we treat them like they have no clue on anything. We are wasting a lot of great talent out there because we get in our own way, right? It's like, well, they're not a major, or it's like, seriously, they know how to do this. Get out of their way, okay? We certainly, we have our regs to follow, right? But they can't be an impediment to what we're doing in the organization. Other things that you want to know. Why do they want to volunteer? What would they like to do? Right? So we need to find out what their interests are. Do they have any other hobbies or interests, maybe that they want to further develop, that they want to kind of explore more? Okay. Available transportation, right? I had one individual in the unit who was wheelchair bound. Large part of the winter in Wyoming, I didn't see him, right? He lived close enough where he could take his wheelchair back and forth, but in the winter, not so much, okay? Are there some members that, don't drive and you need to provide transportation for them, or figure out maybe somebody living close that they can carpool, these kind of things.
Stan, another one is scheduling. I've had people come in and you talk to them, you say, okay, well, we meet every Thursday night. We have an air crew meeting the first Monday of the month, and there's the occasional weekend activity. And the guy goes, oh, well, I'm a prison guard and I work every night from, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. or something like, and so here's a guy who he's not available, but like 2 nights a month. Maybe he's got a place in the organization, but then again, maybe he doesn't. And taking that guy's money and wasting your time and his time with membership, maybe it's not the right fit.
Absolutely. Any other special skills and talents? Definitely we want to check those out. How much time can they volunteer? Which piggybacks right on to what Colonel Nina says, right? If they say they can only, devote an hour or two a week, well, that has to be taken into consideration. Maybe they're not a primary in the role. Maybe they're an assistant and just taking on a certain piece of a function, right? So something that we need to know about. Social media platforms. And this was interesting. It's like, why would they want to know social media platforms? Well, one of the things is going back to this idea of rewards and recognition, going out and putting a shout out to somebody, naturally ask if it's okay if you do this, if they do good stuff, but put out a shout out on their social media or tag them saying, we really appreciate the hard work in planning XYZ event. So knowing that's those social media channels and what handles they have, what accounts that they have, will go a long way in getting good favor with the individuals. But basically, what you're looking for is there a right culture fit? And I don't know about you, but CAP has got its own culture, okay? And every unit in CAP has their own culture. So you want to make sure there's a good fit. We recruited some people, or, I've been in part of organizations that, the cadet joined and then mom and dad joined, and then mom and dad didn't believe the way CAP, their way of doing things, and so fought every single thing tooth and nail, getting in the way of CAP program. And it just was not a right cultural fit. And fortunately, those folks moved on. Okay, so not everybody is a good fit. And this is why the idea of this questionnaire is, are they a good fit? The other thing is you're looking for is, do they have any hidden agendas or unstable behavior? Okay. Today, day and age, I used to never think and worry about it, but the world has changed a little bit. So now, I've got my eye out a little bit. It's like, what are they up to? Okay. And I shouldn't be that suspicious, but I am. So a little record keeping. All right. So I recommend, having digital files, right? Putting together something on like Google Drive or Dropbox where other key members can get in and help maintain the records goes a long way in keeping, I went to do an inspection on a unit and they had their records in a basement and their basement flooded. So here are boxes and boxes of mold, which are totally unusable. So those records are totally destroyed. Having the information up in the cloud that, you can lock down permissions and restrict who gets access to that information, but it makes life so much easier. That questionnaire, putting that questionnaire in there is great for using that information later to figure out, marketing messages, maybe, going through those and looking at them maybe for another fit for that individual. And then also being able to recognize them later. So, but one of the things that you have to really talk to the members about and reassure them is making sure that that is secure and private, and it's not open to the world. Okay, so something to definitely keep in mind there. Okay, let's talk about kind of lining up your recruiting campaign. So this is a lot of the preparatory work as you're putting together. So kind of a recap on what you need to do for getting a recruiting campaign. Okay, first, have a documented plan. Okay, we should not have to reinvent the wheel every time we have an open house. Open houses should be, we pull out the checklist, blow off the dust, let's run through the checklist, do all those things that we need to do to be successful. If we are recruiting for a very targeted audience, we dust off those things. That's what we aim for, and we go for it. We shouldn't have to reinvent this every time. And I watch organizations do this. It's like they've never done an open house before, and it shows. And if you look like you have a bad campaign, it reflects negatively on the organization. People walk out and go, why would I be part of an organization that doesn't have their act together? Okay, so that's why all this preparation is absolutely critical to what we're doing, because it goes ahead and preps for what we want to do. Having goals. We just finished with our goal setting activities in the Northeast region. And we are using OKRs, which are objectives and key results. And all the units, all the wings have these OKRs in place, basically saying what their goals are. Ideally, they get translated further down in the wing to say, these units need to recruit X amount of people above what they have, right? It's probably not crazy amount of numbers, but if we meet those goals, our organization keeps getting bigger, okay? But first, we got to have goals. What are we aiming for? What are we trying to achieve? Once you understand your goals, then it's a matter of getting your needs, and we talked about needs before. Getting those needs, I need this position filled. I need this position filled. That helps focus your attention on what you need to do. We're not going after everybody. We need to fill those positions. That will in turn help us achieve our goals. Working with the staff, letting the staff know what's going on, have them help in making that happen. Setting clear expectations. When the new volunteer comes in, being crystal clear on what the expectations are of the position, the duties, the responsibilities, what the program is about. Not, as Colonel Nina says, promising, tours to Europe to a cadet who will not see that probably for 3 to 5 years in their program if they meet a certain age. So being very clear on those expectations. The reality is, getting new volunteers initially ends up being more work. Right? So we bring somebody in, we got to spend more time training. If we're just running normal, everybody's doing their job, we have this level of training. But when we bring in new members, we got to ramp it up. We've got to get those individuals trained, which means your current staff has got to do more work. So we get in there, getting your budget squared away, and then going out and screening volunteers, right? So this is what you're aiming for in a successful recruiting campaign. What we're trying not to do is warm body recruiting, okay? So warm body recruiting is basically that we're taking everybody in that we want. This is not successful. It is not satisfying for both the organization and the member, and people walk, okay? So another quote that came out of the book, Research reveals that two things keeping people from volunteering are the types of work expected of them and a nonprofit's inability to recognize and utilize the potential volunteers' specific skills and talents. Okay, so not tying in what they want to do and what we need done, putting those expectations very clear, it's not successful. And this is what this idea of warm recruiting is like. Come in, we'll figure out we'll put you somewhere, right? We didn't match talents with what we need done. We didn't do that, and so therefore, folks get frustrated and leave the program. Okay, we need to properly use the volunteers' talents, get them plugged in properly, and they have to be part of that conversation.
Stan, that's the warm body recruiting. It's an interesting thing. I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, we would never turn away a potential member. And I said, why not? And they said, well, because we need everybody we can get. And I said, not to be maybe mean to hobos, but you mean the hobo down the street that wanders in, waves his $40 in your face, you're going to take him too? And they go, well, of course we wouldn't take him. But it gets down to the point where, how did I put this today? I said, you have to make sure that you're looking like a professional organization. A professional organization associates itself with other professionals. You don't just take every Tom, Dick, and Mary off the street. You have to make sure that you're fitting the right people into your organization. A former boss of mine used to always say, you need to make sure you have the right people on the bus and in the right seats.
Absolutely. Okay, so if we don't have our act together, a bad campaign harms our organization. It will mess up. People go out and say, man, these guys are a bunch of clowns, and they walk away from our program telling other people this. We need to make sure that when we do the right preparation, plan properly to have a good open house or a good recruiting campaign. Once we get them, we need to get them trained up quickly to get them fully engaged in the program. And all this has to be done professionally, right? If it looks like, we're just kind of pulling it together and winging it, folks talk bad about our organization. So we cannot have that. Getting our house in order, right? All the preparations, things that we need to consider. Meeting with your staff, right? You meet on a regular basis with your staff. You sit down, you do your normal squadron meeting things. Well, part of that is, hey folks, we're going to do a recruiting campaign. We need to fill these positions, and this is what we're targeting. And sit down and talk with your staff about how to prepare that. Okay, they need to be part of that conversation. They need to get on board. Some of the things that you want to make sure that you cover when you sit down with your staff is remind them of the importance of getting new volunteers. What are you recruiting for? Be very specific about what you're trying to recruit. Importance of the staff to welcome these volunteers and get them up to speed as quick as possible. And also stress that there's going to be a bigger workload when you do this, right? That you just can't do it and nobody is affected. You have to set the expectations also for your staff.
The other side of that too, Stan, is that sometimes, you sit down with the staff and you say, okay, we're thinking about a campaign. And this is when you uncover situations where, maybe your leadership officer says, hey, my wife's retiring in 6 months and we're going to travel a lot more, so I may not be here as often as I am now. Maybe it's time to bring on an assistant or somebody to eventually take over my role. So this is the opportunity you have with your staff to have these conversations and find out where the holes are and where things are going to be a hole in six months, 12 months, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So involve your staff, get them ready, get their input, right? Talk to them about their concerns. right? They're invested in the organization as much as you are. So take time to sit down, listen to them, and understand what their needs are, and listen to where the gaps are in the organization that need to be shored up so you can properly receive these individuals. So definitely take their suggestions, figure out how you can make this all work. Next thing that you really want to try to get in place, and I have to honestly say that I was not good at this, and it's one of these things that I think as an organization we can improve on. Okay, and it's called the Volunteer Handbook. So this is a recommendation out of this book. It's a volunteer handbook, something that you give them, a new volunteer, and say, here you go. It could be digital, it could be, it could be printed out, but things that they would like to see in that volunteer handbook is a welcome message, your mission statement. So, making them feel comfortable. Hey, thanks. We're glad that you're volunteering with us. Here's what we do. This is what our unit stands for, having a mission statement. I'm right now teaching a graduate course on program planning and evaluation. They're pounding home in there that everything, it starts with this mission statement. What does our unit stand for? It's not just we come together every week. Okay. What are unique? What are your unique talents? What do you do for the wing or for your community, and trying to hone that in? And I could probably say that the greatest majority of our units do not have a mission statement that points them in the direction of what they are going to be known for. So definitely something to think about. Introduction to what the program is, maybe a little bit of background, an organization chart. Where do they fit into the puzzle? Where is the slot that you have recruited them for? Where is that? Who do they report to? That whole chain of command. Okay. All the way up, probably through the wing, even region, national, kind of give them the whole food chain, other key functional directors within that chain. Contact information. So this is, again, we're talking about having a mentor, having supervisors. How do I get a hold of them? Important to our program is stewardship, right? Taking care of our money and resources, being able to stress that right up front, that we are serious about taking care of those things. What their rights and responsibilities are, what their expectations are. It's not just signed on the back of the membership saying, okay, I'll do these things, but also give it back to them in a packet saying, this is what you're responsible for. What's acceptable behavior? What's unacceptable behavior? Things that they shouldn't do, right? We shouldn't spend time trying to choose somebody out because they didn't know. 4 inches of regulations, nobody is going to learn that. Heck, we've got members who have been in 30 years that don't know all of it. What training programs are they going to be part of? What expectations are they involved as far as training? Continuing on, any confidential policies, that we protect your information, we don't sell it, all that stuff. We got it in secure servers and things like that. Safety. Everybody's a safety officer, right? We want to have fun, but if we say it's fun, there's a safety element. So we want to make sure that they know about that. Recognition programs. Again, what's up with these recognition programs? We need to let them know how they can be recognized in this program. Some people join just to, they want to serve, but that recognition helps them in other ways, in maybe getting a job, that they're recognized. So we need to do a better job of recognizing our members. Severance policies, okay? If things don't go well, we don't have to ask you to rejoin. There are policies, there are procedures that we have to sever the relationship, and we should we should do this appropriately, right? But we need to do a better job of training folks up, letting them know what the expectations are. And then last thing I have here is for a local unit, for example, the Jamestown unit where I'm at, what is their scope of responsibility? They don't do things in Albany, right? But they're really responsible for this western part of New York. That's where the unit is, supported by Buffalo, the units that go up into that part of the group, the Western New York group. So what is our geographic area? What are we basically responsible for and known for? So that's what they recommend in a volunteer handbook, that something that you would give the member that is theirs to do this. Well, it has to be built. That's what your staff is for, right? Let them go whittle away on it and help build all these things so you have a good book. It doesn't have to appear overnight, but every time you go through a recruiting campaign, ideally it should be getting better and better. Okay, so since our volunteers are part of the face of our organization, we need to make sure that they're trained, that they look and act professional. So part of those expectations are clear to our members, and we will do a lot better. Making sure they're aware of all those responsibilities. Communicate. Do it in email. Do it face to face. When you're at your meetings, social media, every opportunity you can, communicate. I cannot count the number of times that an incident has occurred in our organization, that somebody has crossed the line and they say, well, I just didn't know. Well, as leaders in this organization at every level, we need to make sure our members know. Okay, so going out and communicating as much as possible. Yes, Darren?
Dan, I don't think it's, I jokingly say this, but one of the things that people don't respond in the survey, hey, I quit Civil Air Patrol because they communicated too much with me. Nobody ever says, hey, there was way too much communication. You really need to stop that. It's always, oh, I didn't hear enough from the unit. Oh, nobody talked to me enough, etc. So, I think that if a unit says, hey, look, let's up our member communication methodology by 50%, that would still be probably 200% not enough, but it's a positive improvement. My squadron commander puts out something every week. Every week goes out to the entire membership. It's brief, it's straightforward, it's to the point, but it makes sure that everybody knows what uniform's coming up, where we're meeting, what we're doing, what things are on the event horizon, not just next week, that kind of thing. So, you got to keep in close contact with your volunteers. At the end of the day, you got to remember, these people are volunteers. They're not much different than the guy that goes down and volunteers at Goodwill or the local Boys and Girls Club. You got to keep them in the loop, what's going on and what you're going to be doing.
And they're worth $23.56 per hour.
Indeed.
Respect them that way. Right? Going out and making sure that we treat them as professionals, and they will return professional work for us, right? And that's one of the things. So last bit, one of the things you may want to consider are tailored contracts, right? So I kind of do the air quotes with contracts. But basically what you're doing is having your volunteer handbook is great. That's kind of a general overview. But now here I hired a finance officer, and I say, okay, you're the finance officer, go to it. And I throw the reg at him. Okay, this is not the best way to approach this. Instead, having kind of this sheet saying, okay, you're going to be my finance officer. Here are the things that right now or in this position that you are expected to do, right? That we need to make sure that we do, quarterly audits, or we got to prepare a budget at this part of the year, basically outlining all the responsibilities and the expectations. How well do I want it done? When do I expect it? Make sure that they're clear on what happens if they're coming up short and, they need more time or they need assistance. How do they get that? Making sure that they're clear on risk management, things that keep the organization safe and out of legal trouble, right? So risk management. And then part of this contract is a commitment to training. That when they are becoming part of the organization, they need to be clear on, you need to get your level 1 done. Then we need to enroll you in a duty position in a specialty track. And this is going to require this training. And there's an expectation that you learn to be a CAP officer. So you're going to take the officer basic course. And then within the next 2 years, I want you to take the squadron leadership school, right? Get them committed to this idea of training and continuous improvement in our organization. We, most cases, just stop at, okay, you got to do your level 1. That's all I can ask you to do. No, we can ask them to do a lot more, and we should, to keep improving this organization. Okay, so things to think about. In that, survey your members. Why did you join? Why did you pick this program out of all the other thousands of programs around us? Why did you pick this one? And use that information for future marketing and targeting messages in your recruiting campaigns. Being able to reach out and look at that information and use it to work for your organization. So some things to think about when you do that. My last note, right? We covered a lot of stuff, right? We did it old school. We did it with easels. I tap dance, kind of move the hands a lot. But the last thing is, don't work in a vacuum, okay? And what I mean is, there's other people out there that can assist you. Ask, right? Reach out, ask the questions. See if somebody else has already built a program. I think what we are doing as far as recruiting and retention, we're moving it in the right way. Colonel Ninnis is out there on the national level getting input from all these people. We're building resource pages. We're having these monthly training sessions. We can help in a lot of other ways. We're going to continue to find good ideas and spread them to the rest of the organization. Figuring out best ways to do that, that's what we're working on. But don't work in a vacuum. And a lot of units kind of like, well, this is my unit, I can't talk to anyone else. That's ridiculous, right? We're all in this together. This is our program. So let's work together. So that is my show and tell. I don't have the end, but I can put it up there. So
keep in mind, we have a Facebook group for recruiting and retention officers. If you search for it, you'll find it. It's a closed Facebook group, but it's intended as a bit of a community of practice for folks who are on Facebook and willing to get involved with that. Don't forget there's the recruiting and retention blog on capmembers.com. That recruiting and retention blog is handy. It's we put stuff out on there, tactics, techniques, and procedures, ideas. Links to things. We have the links to the field submitted recruiting materials. That's stuff that units are using out in the field that they've submitted and said, hey, here's an item that you can use. You can modify it. It's in a format that you can modify and adjust to your particular unit. And then we've found these things to actually be functional and work. So there's a lot of resources out there. We're improving the resources all the time. And, today there's really no excuse to not know what's going on. I mean, just ask. I mean, I answer my email, pretty good about that. If you shoot me an email, ask young Colin Rodriguez, who's viewing the webinar right now, I'll answer your email.
Very cool. Okay, so Hey, folks, that is our little show and tell today. I want to thank you very much for joining us. And it is almost 9 o'clock. So we're going to call this, put this in the can, and we're done. So next month, I'm thinking we're going to either follow these couple chapters, or we may have somebody talking about this wonderful booth that they created. Still up in the air. We'll let you know, but we'll go out and post it and invite you in. So thank you. Darren, anything you want to say? Lasting words?
That's it. Really appreciate everybody who was here tonight. And we had about 17 people at one point watching live. And all of these items are available in the playlist. If you click Colonel Scrabbit's name underneath the video, you'll be taken to all of his videos, and you'll be able to see the playlist. That's the NER recruiting presentations, and those are available. And our oldest one has 1,300 views, Stan.
1,300, rocking the boat. Very cool. So, all right, folks. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next month. Bye for now.